It was a gray afternoon in late fall, the kind where the rain taps against the windows like it's trying to get in and share your grief. I sat there in the lawyer's office, surrounded by dark wood panels and stacks of legal folders that smelled like old paper and finality. My name's Emily, and at 52, I'd spent the last 25 years pouring my blood, sweat, and every waking hour into Dad's mid-sized retail business, turning it from a struggling corner store into something worth about $1, $5 million with outlets across 3 towns. Dad had passed just 2 weeks earlier from that long battle with cancer, and now here we were, me, my brother Jack, and a handful of relatives, waiting for the will to be read. Welcome to Martha's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you, right? Now, I read every single comment, and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. The lawyer, Mr. Harlan, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses, flipping through the pages with that slow, deliberate way lawyers do. "All right, folks, let's get to it," he said. "Your father, Robert, left specific instructions. The family home goes to both children equally, along with some personal savings divided the same way." I nodded, expecting that much. It made sense, fair even. But then he kept going. "As for the business, Robert's retail emporium, including all assets, inventory, and properties," Mr. Harlan continued, his voice steady, "that goes entirely to his son, Jack." The words hit me like a slap across the face. I felt my stomach drop, and the room seemed to tilt a little. "Jack?" My brother Jack, who was 48 now but still acted like he was in his 20s, the one who'd blown through college partying, bounced from one dead-end job to another, and never once set foot in the store unless it was to ask Dad for money. I'd been the one handling suppliers, managing staff, balancing the books through recessions and booms. Dad and I had built it together, late nights arguing over expansions, celebrating when we hit our first million in sales. And now this? I turned to look at Jack sitting there in his rumpled suit, looking half asleep. He caught my eye and just shrugged, a little smirk playing on his lips. "What? Dad trusted me to keep it going, Em. He knew I'd step up." His words stung, right there in front of everyone, Aunt Clara gasping softly, Cousin Mike shifting uncomfortably in his chair. Trusted him? Over me? I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, that mix of shock and anger bubbling up. "Jack, you haven't stepped up a day in your life," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I've run that place for years. Dad and I—" Mr. Harlan held up a hand, interrupting gently. "Emily, the will is clear. There's a clause here about performance expectations, but the transfer is to Jack outright." I leaned forward, scanning the document he slid across the table. That's when I noticed it. The amendment date on the will, stamped just 3 months ago, when Dad was already weak from chemo, barely leaving his bed. It didn't match the timeline I'd remembered. Dad had told me last year the will was set. No changes needed. Why alter it now? I pulled out my phone under the table, pretending to check a message, and snapped a quick photo of the page while everyone was distracted by Jack's chuckle. "Performance expectations?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even, though my heart was pounding. "What does that mean exactly?" The lawyer glanced at Jack before answering. "It stipulates that Jack must maintain the business's viability for at least a year, or there could be reviews, but ownership transfers immediately." Jack chuckled, leaning back in his chair like it was all a joke. "See, Em? Dad gave me a chance. Maybe you can stick around and help out, like old times." Help out? Like I was some assistant, not the one who'd kept it afloat? The humiliation burned deep, especially with the family watching, their pitying looks making it worse. Aunt Clara reached over and patted my hand. Patting my hand with a small, sad smile. She seemed to be trying to say something comforting, but her words felt empty. "Honey, your dad must have had his reasons." "Reasons," I muttered back, pulling away. "Like outdated ideas that the son gets everything? I've earned this, Aunt Clara, more than anyone." But Jack just kept smirking. "Come on, sis, don't make a scene." Dad wanted the family name carried on properly. The family name, his way of saying a man's job. I bit my tongue, feeling that frustration lock me in place like I was stuck in quicksand. Power and money. That's what drove Jack. He'd always chased the easy way, and now Dad had handed it to him on a platter. For me, it was about the legacy, the years I'd sacrificed weekends and vacations for that business. I stood up slowly, gathering my coat, feeling the weight of every second in that room. "Fine," I said, my voice steady but cold. "Congratulations, Jack. But don't come crying when it all falls apart." As I walked out into the rain, the door clicking shut behind me, I felt isolated. Like the ground had shifted under my feet. The business wasn't just work. It was my life, our family's heart. And now it was his. I drove home in silence, replaying that amendment date in my mind. Something felt off, but I pushed it down for now, too raw to think straight. Little did I know, that was just the beginning of the mess. Those first few weeks after the will reading were like walking through molasses. Everything felt heavy and slow, and I couldn't shake that knot in my stomach. I was back at the store the very next day, just a quick drive from the lawyer's office, where everything had been turned upside down, not because I had to, but because it was my routine, my second home. Robert's Retail Emporium sat on the edge of our small town, a 2-story building with big glass windows showcasing everything from kitchen gadgets to seasonal decor, the kind of place folks came to for a chat as much as a purchase. I'd built the staff up to 15 people over the years, loyal folks who'd seen me through thick and thin. But now, with Jack officially in charge, I showed up in jeans and a sweater, telling myself I was just helping out, not stepping on his toes. I walked in that morning, the bell jingling like always, and found Maria, our floor manager, restocking shelves with a worried frown. "Emily, thank goodness you're here," she said, setting down a box of coffee makers. "The new shipment from Henderson Supplies is late again. I called them, but they said something about payment issues." "Payment issues? That's nonsense. We've always paid on time." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the shared email account I still had access to, which Jack hadn't bothered to revoke yet, spotting a few overdue notices. My heart sank a bit, but I brushed it off. "I'll sort it with Jack. Where is he anyway?" Maria glanced toward the back office. "He came in late, said he had a meeting. But he's been on the phone most of the morning." I nodded and headed back there, knocking lightly on the door before pushing it open. Jack was lounging in Dad's old leather chair, feet up on the desk, scrolling through his phone with a coffee mug in hand. The office looked the same. Photos of us as kids on the walls, stacks of invoices on the filing cabinet, but it felt wrong with him in that spot. "Hey, Em," he said without looking up. "What's up?" "Jack, we've got a problem with suppliers. Henderson's holding shipments over late payments. Have you checked the accounts lately?" He finally glanced at me, waving it off like it was nothing. Yeah, I'll get to it. Been busy with some ideas to modernize this place. Thinking about online sales, you know? Online sales are great, but we need to keep the basics running first. Inventory checks haven't been done in days. Shelves are looking thin out there." Jack set his phone down and leaned back, crossing his arms. "Look, sis, I appreciate the input, but Dad left this to me. I don't need you micromanaging every little thing. Go enjoy your time off or something." His words hit like a dismissal, and I felt that frustration bubble up again. But I swallowed it down. "I'm not micromanaging, Jack. I'm trying to help. This store's been my life, too." "Yeah, well, it's mine now. I'll handle it." He picked up his phone again, signaling the end of the conversation. I left the office feeling stuck, like I was yelling into the wind. Over the next couple of months, I kept coming in a few days a week, telling myself it was for the staff, not for him. But things started slipping in ways that made my blood boil slowly. Jack would skip morning meetings, leaving the team confused about shifts. One afternoon, I caught him authorizing a big discount on high-end appliances without checking stock levels, which led to us running out mid-sale. Customers complained and sales dipped a little, but nothing catastrophic yet, just enough to make me grind my teeth. Then, about 3 months after the will reading, my phone rang while I was at home making dinner. It was Tony from Henderson Supplies, a guy I'd known for 15 years, always reliable with our orders. "Emily, I hate to bother you at home," he said, his voice hesitant, "but we've got an issue with your account. Payments have been spotty lately, and there's some charges I don't recognize." "Spotty? Tony, what's going on? I thought we were current." He sighed on the other end. "Look, off the record, since we've got history. Your brother's been charging personal stuff to the company card. Trips to Vegas, hotel stays, that sort of thing. I saw the statements when I followed up. I can email you copies if you want, but keep it quiet." My mind raced as I stirred the pot on the stove, the steam rising like my temper. Personal trips? That explained the meetings he'd mentioned. "Send them over, Tony. And thanks for the heads up, I owe you one. Sure thing, Emily, just hate to see the business suffer. Your dad built something solid. I hung up and checked my email right away. There they were, invoice copies showing charges for flights, casinos, even a fancy dinner that had nothing to do with retail. Evidence right there, black and white, that Jack was treating the company like his personal piggy bank. Money, that's what drove him, always chasing the quick thrill without thinking ahead. For Tony, it was about getting paid, protecting his own business. But for me, it deepened that sense of isolation, like I was the only one seeing the train wreck coming. That night, I paced the kitchen, my husband watching from the table. "You gonna talk to him?" he asked, sipping his coffee. "I have to. This can't go on." The next day, I cornered Jack in the office again, printouts in hand. "Jack, we need to talk, now." He looked up from his computer, annoyance flashing across his face. "What now, Em? I'm in the middle of something." I slapped the invoices down on the desk. "This, Vegas trips on the company dime, hotels. You're draining the accounts for your fun while suppliers go unpaid. This is why shipments are late." He glanced at the papers, then pushed them aside. "It's not a big deal. I'll pay it back when sales pick up. Dad used to do stuff like this sometimes." "Dad never did this. He built this place with hard work, not gambling sprees. You're risking everything. Jobs, the legacy. Stop this now or it'll blow up." Jack stood up, his voice rising. "You think you know better? Dad gave it to me because he knew you'd hover like this. Back off, Emily. It's my company, my rules. I helped make this company what it is. You can't just—" "Enough!" He pointed to the door. "If you don't like it, stay out. I don't need your lectures." I stormed out, feeling more frustrated than ever, that stalemate locking in tighter. He was hiding his laziness behind bluster, protecting his reputation as the boss, while I was left on the outside, watching it all unravel bit by bit. The store was starting to show cracks, empty shelves, grumbling staff, and I knew if I didn't do something soon, it'd get worse. But for now, I was stuck, simmering in that slow decline, wondering how Dad could have let this happen. By the time 5 months had rolled around since the will reading, the cracks in the business were starting to show like weeds pushing through concrete. I'd cut back my visits to the store to just once a week, trying to give Jack space. But every time I walked in, the place felt a little more off, shelves half empty, customers browsing but not buying as much, and the staff huddling in whispers when they thought no one was looking. Maria pulled me aside one Tuesday morning as I was checking the display racks, her face lined with worry under the fluorescent lights. "Emily, things are getting bad," she said quietly, glancing over her shoulder toward the office. "Bills are stacking up, utilities, rent for the warehouse. And talk of layoffs, it's got everyone on edge. Jack says it's just a slow season, but we've never had this before." I felt a chill run down my spine, that suspense building like a storm cloud gathering. "Layoffs? Maria, we've got 15 people counting on these jobs. What's he doing back there?" She shrugged, her voice dropping even lower. "He spends half the day on calls, not business ones from what I can tell. And the books? He won't let anyone near them anymore." I nodded, my mind racing. This wasn't just laziness anymore, it was heading toward disaster. I waited until Jack stepped out for lunch, then slipped into the office, my heart pounding a bit faster than usual. The desk was a mess, papers scattered, coffee stains on folders. I quickly rifled through the expense reports, my fingers flipping pages as I scanned for anything out of place. There they were, discrepancies jumping out at me like red flags. Entries for consulting fees to companies I'd never heard of, amounts that didn't match our usual vendors, and bank transfers to personal accounts. Altered logs, clearly. Someone had whited out dates and rewritten them. I snapped photos with my phone, adding to the invoices Tony had sent me earlier. Just as I was closing the drawer, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Jack. I let it ring for a second, steadying my breath, then answered. "Hey, Jack, what's up?" You around? I could use some minor help with these quarterly reports," he said, his voice tense, not the usual laid-back drawl. "Things are a bit messy, and you always had a knack for this stuff." I paused, leaning against the desk, the suspense accelerating in my chest. Minor help? After months of pushing me away? This was the twist I'd been waiting for, him reaching out because he was in over his head. "Sure, I can swing by later." "What's the issue exactly?" "Just some numbers not adding up. No big deal, but hurry if you can." I hung up, my detective instincts kicking in full gear. "No big deal, my foot." Those altered logs were screaming trouble. I stepped out of the office and headed straight home, where I dialed up Harold, an old accountant contact who'd worked with Dad for years before retiring. He'd always been straight with me. a no-nonsense guy in his 70s with a sharp eye for fraud. "Harold, it's Emily. Got a minute?" I asked, pacing my living room with the photos pulled up on my laptop. "Emily, good to hear from you. What's going on? Sound like you're in a hurry." I explained the situation quickly. The inheritance, Jack's slacking, the personal charges, and now these funky expense reports. "Can you take a discreet look? I've got photos of the logs and some bank records. I need to know if this is just sloppy or something worse." He chuckled dryly on the other end. "Send him over. For old Robert's sake, I'll poke around. But keep it quiet. My reputation's on the line if this blows up." "Deal. Thanks, Harold. I owe you big." I emailed him everything, my fingers flying over the keys, the pace of it all making my pulse quicken. Money was driving Jack clear as day, siphoning it for his habits while the business bled. For Harold, it was professional duty, upholding his name in the industry after all those years. And me, confirming my suspicions, protecting what was left of Dad's legacy before it crumbled entirely. 2 days later, Harold called back while I was in the grocery store, dodging carts in the produce aisle. "Emily, you sitting down? Those logs are tampered with, all right. Transfers to offshore accounts, inflated expenses. Looks like embezzlement to me. I've got a summary report ready. It matches the bank records you sent. This could sink the ship if it keeps up." My cart stopped dead in the aisle, a shopper bumping into me with an apology I barely heard. "Embezzlement. Harold, are you sure?" "As sure as my last audit. Jack's been moving funds around like it's his personal ATM. You need to act fast, or creditors will come knocking." I thanked him and hung up, my mind whirling with this new evidence. The accountant's summary and those transfer records. Solid proof now stacking up beside the will photo and invoices. The suspense was thick. Jack's call for help suddenly made sense. He was panicking, trying to pull me in to clean up without admitting fault. That evening, I drove back to the store unannounced, the sun setting low and casting long shadows through the windows. Jack was in the office, rubbing his temples over a pile of papers. "Em, you came," he said, looking up with forced relief. "These reports are a nightmare. Can you take a look?" I sat down across from him, keeping my face neutral. "Sure. But Jack, while I'm here, let's talk about these expenses. I've heard from suppliers, more unpaid bills. What's really going on?" He shifted in his chair, avoiding my eyes. "Just cash flow issues. Nothing I can't handle. Cash flow from Vegas trips or those consulting fees that don't exist?" I pressed, watching his reaction. His face paled a bit, but he recovered quick. "What are you talking about? You're imagining things. Focus on the reports, not rumors." I didn't push further right then, but inside my drive was accelerating. I was onto him now, piecing it together faster than before. As I pretended to review the papers, noting more red flags, Maria poked her head in. "Boss, phone for you, another creditor." Jack snatched the receiver, his voice tense as he stepped out. "This is Jack." "Yeah, we'll get that sorted." Left alone, I quickly copied a few more files to my phone, using the scanner app to digitize them discreetly, the suspense building to a fever pitch. This wasn't just decline, it was deliberate damage. I left that night with Harold's report burning a hole in my inbox, knowing I had to dig deeper before confronting him head on. The business was teetering, and if I didn't accelerate this investigation, we'd all go down with it. After Harold's call about the embezzlement, I couldn't sit still. The tension was mounting like a pressure cooker about to blow. It was pushing 6 months since the will reading, and the store was looking more run down every day, with flickering lights in the back room and fewer cars in the parking lot. I'd taken to working from home on my laptop, poring over the photos and reports I'd gathered, my kitchen table covered in printouts like some makeshift war room. My husband Tom peeked in one evening as I highlighted sections of Harold's summary. The embezzlement laid out clear as day. Inflated payments to fake vendors, funds funneled straight to Jack's accounts. "Emily, you're gonna wear yourself out," Tom said, setting a cup of tea beside me. "What's next? You can't keep sneaking around like this." I looked up, rubbing my eyes. "I have to, Tom. This isn't just sloppy, it's theft. Harold's report shows thousands siphoned off, but I need more to connect it back to the will. Why did Dad change it so late?" He sat down across from me, his face serious after 40 years of marriage, always the steady one. "Maybe talk to folks who were around Dad at the end, like that nurse or the old staff." "That's it," I said, snapping my fingers. "Karen, the former bookkeeper. Jack fired her right after taking over, said she was redundant. But she was there during Dad's last months, handling paperwork." I picked up my phone and dialed Karen's number, which I'd pulled from the old staff directory before Jack locked me out. She answered on the third ring, her voice wary. Emily, it's been a while. What can I do for you? Karen, hi. Listen, I hate to drag you back into this, but I'm looking into some things at the store. You were close to Dad before he passed. Did you notice anything odd with the Will or Jack's involvement? There was a pause on the line long enough to make my stomach twist. Odd? Emily, I don't know if I should say. Please, Karen, the business is tanking and I think Jack's behind it. Anything you saw could help. She sighed deeply. All right, but this stays between us for now. Jack was always hovering those last weeks when your dad was too weak to argue much. I overheard them one afternoon in the hospital room, Jack pushing him to amend the will, saying he needed control to pay off debts or the family would lose everything. Sounded like gambling losses to me. Jack mentioned Vegas more than once. Your dad resisted at first, but Jack kept at it, saying you'd be fine on your own. I think he wore him down. My hand tightened on the phone, that twist hitting me hard. Jack pressuring Dad when he was vulnerable, all because of his own messes. Gambling debts? Karen, that's huge. Did you see the amendment? I handled some notary stuff afterward. It was rushed. Jack fired me a month later, probably to keep me quiet. I felt bad not telling you sooner, but I needed my severance for my own safety. Bills piling up after the job loss. I get it, Karen. Motivation like that, protecting yourself, makes sense. Can you give a statement? Something sworn, maybe? She hesitated again. If it helps fix this, yes. I'll email you a written account and we can get it notarized later. Thank you. This means everything. I hung up and immediately opened Harold's report again, cross-referencing it with Karen's story. The inflated vendor payments matched the timeline of Jack's trips, and now with her witness account, it painted a clear picture. Jack's gambling had driven him to manipulate Dad, then bleed the company dry. Evidence was stacking up. The audit summary from Harold, bank records showing the transfers, and now Karen's sworn statement on the way. For Karen, it was justice after being wronged, reclaiming her safety net. Jack, pure secrecy, hiding his failures at any cost. But I couldn't celebrate yet. Tension was building, and I had to repress my urge to storm over there. Instead, I printed everything and tucked it into a folder, planning my next move carefully. That weekend, we had a family gathering at Aunt Clara's house, a belated memorial for Dad, with barbecue in the backyard and relatives milling about under string lights. I arrived with Tom, forcing a smile as I hugged cousins and set down a potato salad. Jack was there, beer in hand, chatting up Uncle Mike like nothing was wrong. Emily, good to see you, Aunt Clara said, pulling me into the kitchen. How are things? I know the will was a shock. Shocking's one word for it, I replied, keeping my voice low, but I'm managing. Jack wandered in then, overhearing. Managing? Sis, you've been poking around the store too much. What's that about? I turned to face him, the room feeling smaller suddenly. Just concerned, Jack. Sales are down, bills unpaid. You asked for my help, remember? He set his beer down hard on the counter, his face reddening. Help? More like spying. You're just jealous I got the company. Always thought you were the golden child, but Dad saw through it. The words stung, humiliating me right there in front of Aunt Clara, who gasped softly. Jack, that's not fair. No, she's been undermining me, he cut in, pointing a finger. Whispering to staff, digging through files. If you're so smart, why didn't Dad give it to you? I felt the anger rise, my fists clenching at my sides, but I repressed it, biting back the explosion. Maybe because you pressured him when he was sick. Yeah, I know about that. His eyes widened for a split second, but he recovered. What? That's crazy. You're paranoid, Em. Stay out of my business. Aunt Clara stepped between us. Enough, both of you. This is about remembering Robert, not fighting. I nodded, excusing myself to the backyard, my heart pounding. The humiliation burned, but it fueled me. This reversal where he accused me only confirmed I was close. Tom found me by the fence, rubbing my back. You okay? Yeah, I whispered, but he's scared. I need to hunt deeper, get that statement from Karen solidified. The rest of the evening dragged, with Jack avoiding me and relatives shooting concerned looks. Driving home, I called Karen again. That statement, can we meet tomorrow to notarize it? Absolutely, I'll bring what I have. We met at a coffee shop the next morning, away from prying eyes. Karen slid over a typed page detailing the hospital conversation, her signature at the bottom. Here, I added dates and specifics. Get this to a notary and it's official. I scanned it quickly, clear, damning evidence of Jack's pressure tactics, tied to his gambling mentions. We walked to the bank next door where a notary stamped it for a small fee. This is gold, Karen. Thank you. Just make it right, she said, hugging me briefly. For your dad's sake. Back home, I added the sworn statement to my folder, the tension repressing any sense of relief. I knew Jack might lash out if he suspected more. But with this, I was deeper into the hunt, piecing it all together. The will amendment driven by his debts, the embezzlement to cover them up. Money and reputation were his motivations, twisting everything. For me, it was about reclaiming what was fair, protecting the staff's safety. That afternoon, Maria texted me. Layoffs announced today, 3 people gone. Help? My resolve hardened. I couldn't repress it forever. The confrontation was coming. But first, I needed one more layer, maybe a lawyer to review it all. The pieces were falling into place, but the tension was unbearable, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. With Karen's sworn statement in my hands and the business teetering on the edge at that 6-month mark, I knew I had to build my case without tipping my hand too soon. The repression was eating at me, like holding back a scream in a crowded room. I'd started avoiding the store altogether, working instead from my home office, a cozy corner in the den with Dad's old desk lamp casting a warm glow over my growing folder of evidence. Tom came in one morning with coffee, setting it down gently as I organized the papers. Harold's audit report showing the embezzled. Thousands, bank transfers traced to Jack's accounts, the supplier invoices from Tony, photos of those altered logs, and now Karen's detailed account of Jack pressuring Dad in the hospital. You're really going for it, aren't you? Tom said, leaning against the doorframe, his eyes full of concern after all these years together. I looked up, forcing a small smile. I have to, Tom. The layoffs hit 3 good people last week, folks with families. If I don't stop this, the whole place shuts down. But I need a lawyer now, someone to review all this and tell me if we can challenge the will. He nodded, crossing his arms. Who you thinking? That guy from church, Mr. Ellis? No, someone sharper. Remember Laura Simmons? She handled Aunt Clara's divorce years back, tough as nails. Specializes in estate law. Tom raised an eyebrow. The one who got Clara the house and half the pension? Yeah, she'd do. Call her. I picked up the phone right then, dialing Laura's office number I'd looked up online. Her secretary put me through after a short hold, and Laura's voice came on crisp and professional. Emily, it's been ages. What can I do for you? Laura, hi, I'm in a bind with my dad's will. He left the family business to my brother Jack, but I've got evidence he pressured Dad into changing it during his illness. And now Jack's mismanaging it badly, embezzlement even. Can you take a look? There was a pause, papers rustling on her end. Sounds messy, but doable. Estate challenges aren't easy, but undue influence and fiduciary breach, that's grounds. Send me what you've got and let's meet tomorrow. My fee's standard, $300 an hour, but for old friends, I'll cap the initial consult at 2 hours. Deal, I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. I'll email it all over now. Thanks, Laura. I hung up and hit send on the email using a secure attachment to keep it private. The will photo with that suspicious amendment date, Harold's summary, Karen's statement, the invoices, and those bank records. Money motivated Laura, sure, but she had a reputation for fighting for the underdog, especially women overlooked in family matters. For me, it was about safety now, protecting the staff and what was left of Dad's legacy from total ruin. The next day, I met Laura at her office downtown, a sleek space with law books lining the walls and a view of the town square. She greeted me with a firm handshake, her sharp suit making me feel a bit underdressed in my blouse and slacks. Emily, come in. I've reviewed your files. Solid start. The sworn statement from Karen is key. It shows undue influence. And the financials? Clear breach of duty. We can file for a will contest and seek an injunction to freeze company assets. I sat down across from her, leaning forward. Injunction? That means stopping Jack from making more decisions? Exactly, she replied, tapping her pen on the desk. It buys time while we investigate deeper. But we'll need more leverage, maybe emails or witnesses confirming the gambling debts. You mentioned suppliers. Get statements from them, too. I can do that. Tony from Henderson's already helped once. What about the performance clause in the will? Dad added it last minute. Laura scanned the will copy. Interesting. It requires Jack to maintain viability for a year, or it reverts to family review. We're at 6 months. If we prove decline, that triggers it. I'll draft an opinion letter outlining our case. Use it to rally support. Support from who? I asked, my mind racing. Key stakeholders, employees, maybe relatives. Quietly, though. Don't confront Jack yet. We build repressed, then strike. I nodded, feeling that tension coil tighter inside me. All right. How much to get started? Retainers $5,000. We'll bill as we go. I wrote the check right there, my hand steady. Power was shifting. With Laura on board, I had legal leverage now. Back home, I started rallying allies discreetly. I called Maria first, catching her after her shift. Maria, it's Emily. Listen, things are bad, but I'm working on something. Can you get me email trails from the office computer? Anything showing Jack's approvals on those fake expenses? She hesitated on the line. Emily, I could lose my job if he finds out. I know, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't crucial. It's for a lawyer to save the store. Think of the others laid off. A sigh. Okay, for you. I'll send what I can tonight, but be careful. That evening, Maria's email came through. Forwarded chains from the company server, showing Jack authorizing payments to non-existent vendors, timestamps matching his trips, more evidence email trails as solid proof. Her motivation was job security, plain and simple. She'd seen too many friends let go. Next, I reached out to Tony again. Tony, I need a favor. Can you provide a formal statement on those unpaid bills and personal charges? Emily, you're really digging in, huh? Sure, I'll write it up, email it by morning. Just want my invoices paid eventually. Thanks, this could turn things around. His statement arrived the next day, detailing the discrepancies and confirming the company card abuses. I forwarded it all to Laura, who replied quickly, perfect, adding to the dossier. Opinion letter incoming. But then the twist hit. Jack must have sensed something, because that afternoon my phone rang. It was him, voice edged with suspicion. Em, what's this I hear about you talking to Maria? She's been acting weird. I froze for a second, repressing the panic, keeping my tone casual as I stirred soup on the stove. Talking? We chat sometimes, Jack, old friends. Don't play dumb. I saw her on the computer extra long yesterday. If you're interfering, I'll cut all family ties. No more holidays, nothing. And don't think about the business. It's mine. His threat reversed the power briefly, humiliating me over the phone, making me feel small like when we were kids and he'd tattle to Dad. Jack, I'm not interfering. Just worried about the store. Worried or plotting. Stay away or else. He hung up, leaving me shaking. Tom walked in, seeing my face. What happened? Jack's onto us a bit, threatened to cut ties. Tom hugged me. He's bluffing. You've got the law on your side now. I nodded, but inside, the repression built. I wanted to explode, tell him everything. But Laura's words echoed, build quietly. So I did, leaking subtle hints to a couple suppliers via anonymous emails, suggesting they hold shipments until payments cleared. It escalated the pressure on Jack without my fingerprints. By the end of the week, Laura's opinion letter arrived, a formal document outlining the case for undue influence and breach, recommending a board challenge since the company had a small advisory group from Dad's era. I printed it, adding it to my folder, our compiled dossier now thick with proof. Maria texted again. More layoffs rumored. Hurry. I replied, almost there. Hang on. The tension was repressed, but I was positioning for the attack. Allies in place. Leverage mounting. Jack's call had humiliated me, but it fueled the hunt. Soon I'd unleash it all. By the time that fateful day came, right at the 6-month mark since Dad's will had turned my world upside down, I was ready to explode like a volcano that's been rumbling too long. I'd spent the last week finalizing everything with Laura, her opinion letter in my bag like a loaded gun, alongside the thick dossier of evidence, Harold's audit showing the embezzled funds, Karen's sworn statement about Jack pressuring Dad, those email trails from Maria proving the fake vendors, Tony's invoice discrepancies, and the bank records tracing it all back to Jack's gambling sprees. The store was in freefall, more layoffs announced, suppliers cutting us off, and creditors calling nonstop. I called an emergency meeting with the advisory board Dad had set up years ago, a small group of old business friends and relatives who held minor stakes, including Aunt Clara and Uncle Mike. Laura had advised me to use the performance clause in the will as our entry point, proving Jack hadn't maintained viability and hit him with the undue influence claim. I arrived at the store early that morning, the parking lot emptier than I'd ever seen it. Only a few cars from the remaining staff. Maria met me at the door, her eyes wide with hope. Emily, is this it? The meeting? Yes, I said, hugging her quickly. Stay close. Things might get loud. We gathered in the back conference room, a dusty space with a long table and faded photos of Dad cutting ribbons at openings. Aunt Clara and Uncle Mike showed up first, followed by 2 board members, Misters Reynolds, a retired supplier, and Mrs. Patel, a local accountant, part of the small advisory board Dad had set up for company oversight. Laura joined via video call, her face stern on my laptop screen. Jack strolled in last, looking haggard with dark circles under his eyes, his shirt untucked like he hadn't slept. "What's this about, Em?" Jack asked, dropping into a chair at the head of the table, trying to assert power. "You call a board meeting without my say-so? This is my company." I stood up, my voice strong and steady. No more repressing the fury I'd bottled up. "Not anymore, Jack. We're here under the Will's performance clause. You've run this place into the ground in 6 months, embezzlement, unpaid bills, layoffs. It's time for a review." He laughed, but it came out forced, his hands fidgeting with a pen. "Review? You're out of your mind. Dad left it to me fair and square." Laura's voice cut in from the screen. "Actually, Mr. Robert's will allows for intervention if viability isn't maintained. Emily has evidence of breach of fiduciary duty. Shall we start with the audit?" I slid Harold's report across the table, watching Jack's face pale as he flipped through it. "This shows thousands diverted to your personal accounts, Jack. Fake vendors, gambling trips, all while the business bleeds." Aunt Clara gasped, leaning forward. "Jack, is this true? Robert would be heartbroken." "It's not what it looks like," Jack stammered, pushing the report away. "Just temporary loans. I'll pay it back." "With what?" I pressed, pulling out Karen's statement next. "This sworn account says you pressured Dad to change the will when he was dying, all to cover your debts. You wore him down, Jack. That's undue influence." Uncle Mike shook his head, his voice gruff. "Boy, if that's right, you've got some explaining to do." Jack's eyes darted around the room, sweat beading on his forehead. "Karen? That fired bookkeeper? She's lying. Em, you're twisting everything because you're jealous." "No, Jack," I said, my tone explosive now, slamming the email trails down. "These approvals came from your login. Tony's statements confirm the personal charges. You've humiliated me, sidelined me after I built this with Dad, but now it's over." Mrs. Patel picked up the documents, scanning them quickly. "These look legitimate. Bank transfers don't lie." Jack stood up, his chair scraping back loudly. "This is a setup. Em, you forged these." "I'll sue you for slander," Laura interjected calmly. "Actually, forgery claims won't hold. We have originals and witnesses. The board can vote to suspend you pending investigation." Mr. Reynolds nodded. "I've seen enough. All in favor of suspension." Hands went up, Aunt Clara, Uncle Mike, Mrs. Patel, Mr. Reynolds. Maria, though not voting, smiled from the corner. Jack's face crumpled, the reversal hitting him hard as he realized his power was slipping away. "You can't do this," Jack yelled, pointing at me. "Em, please, let's talk privately." The room cleared out at my nod, leaving just me and Jack, Laura still on the call. He slumped back into his chair, his voice breaking. "Okay, fine. It's bad. Creditors are closing in. I need help. Lend me some money, sis. Just enough to tide over. Please, I'm begging you." There it was, the desperate beg, just like I'd imagined in my darkest moments. But hearing it now felt satisfying, explosive payback after all the humiliation. "Begging? After you took everything Dad and I built? You called me jealous, threatened to cut ties. Why should I help?" "Because we're family," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "I messed up. The gambling, it got out of hand. Dad changed the will because I told him I'd lose the house otherwise. But I can fix it. Give me a loan, and I'll step aside." I leaned in, my voice strong and unyielding. "No, Jack, family doesn't mean bailing out betrayal. You've silenced Dad's legacy long enough. The board's suspending you pending the will contest." Laura chimed in. "Emily's right. We'll file the contest today. Jack, expect papers for embezzlement charges, civil at least, maybe criminal." Jack buried his face in his hands, silenced at last, his counterattacks crumbling. "What happens to me?" "You face the consequences," I said, standing tall. "Probation, debts, no more easy rides." As the board reconvened, they voted unanimously. Jack out, me in as interim manager. Aunt Clara hugged me tightly. "You did good, honey. Robert would be proud." I nodded, the satisfaction washing over me like a wave, explosive and freeing. Maria clapped, the staff peeking in with relieved smiles. Jack slunk out without another word, his begging plea hanging in the air like a defeated echo. That afternoon, Laura filed the motions, and I started calling suppliers, promising stability. The takedown was done. Strong. Satisfying. No more repression. I'd attacked with facts, silenced his lies, and now the business had a fighting chance. After that explosive meeting where Jack begged me for a loan right there in front of everyone, breaking down like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar, I felt a calm wash over me for the first time in months. Like the storm had finally passed and the sun was peeking through, the board had voted him out on the spot, suspending his control pending the full will contest. And Laura wasted no time filing the papers that afternoon, her voice confident over the phone as she walked me through it. I stood in the conference room after everyone left, looking at Dad's old photos on the wall, and whispered to myself, "We did it, Dad. It's going to be okay now." Maria poked her head in, her eyes shining with relief, and said, "Emily, what now? The staff's buzzing out there. They want to know if their jobs are safe." I turned to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Tell them to come back tomorrow. No more layoffs. We're stabilizing this ship starting today." She nodded and hurried out, and I sat down at the table, pulling out my phone to call Tom. "Honey, it's over," I told him, my voice steady but soft. "Jack's out. The board sided with us." Tom let out a whoop on the other end, his laughter warm through the line. "I knew you could do it, Em. Proud of you. What's the plan?" "Laura's challenging the will officially, undue influence and breach. In the meantime, I'm interim manager. We'll get the books straight, pay the suppliers." I paused, glancing at the scattered papers Jack had left behind. "And Jack, he's facing suits now. Civil for sure, maybe more." "Good," Tom said firmly. "He brought it on himself. Come home soon, we'll celebrate with your favorite lasagna." I hung up and started making calls right then, reaching out to Tony first. "Tony, it's Emily. We're back on track. Expect payment by end of week. Can you release the shipments?" He chuckled on the line, sounding relieved. "Emily, music to my ears. Yeah, I'll get them rolling. Glad you're in charge now. Your dad would approve." "Thanks, Tony. Means a lot." Next, I called Harold, thanking him for the audit that had sealed it all. "Harold, your report was the nail in the coffin. We're turning this around because of you. Just doing what's right," he replied gruffly. "Keep me posted if you need more help." By evening, I'd rehired the laid-off staff over quick phone calls, their voices full of gratitude. One of them, Sarah from inventory, said, "Emily, I didn't know what we'd do." "Thank you. My kids were worried sick." "We're family here," I told her. "See you tomorrow." As the sun set outside the store windows, casting a golden glow over the empty aisles, I felt freed. Like a weight had lifted off my chest after all those months of frustration and hunting. The next few weeks blurred into a calm routine of rebuilding. Laura kept me updated on the legal front, her emails coming in steadily. "Court date set for next month," she said in one call. But with the evidence, Karen's statement, the financials, were strong. Jack's not contesting much. His lawyer advised settling. I met with the board again in the conference room, laying out a plan to stabilize. "First, we pay debts," I said, pointing to the spreadsheet on the projector. "Then boost sales with promotions. Long-term, maybe sell shares fairly among family and staff." Aunt Clara nodded, her hand on mine. "Emily, you're doing what Robert always wanted. Fairness. I'm sorry I didn't see Jack's mess sooner." "It's okay, Aunt Clara," I replied softly. "We all trusted Dad's choice at first." Uncle Mike chimed in, his voice booming. "And Jack? What's his story now?" I sighed, leaning back. "He's facing civil suits for the embezzlement. Lost his house already to debts. Had to move in with a friend. Working odd jobs last I heard, like delivering pizzas. No more high life." Mrs. Patel shook her head. "Deserved, after what he did. Pressuring your poor dad like that." "Yeah," Mr. Reynolds added, "but the business? Under you, it'll thrive again." We voted on the plan unanimously, and as the meeting wrapped, Maria brought in coffee for everyone. "To new beginnings," she toasted, raising her cup. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking mine against hers. Walking out to my car that night, I called Karen to update her. "Your statement made all the difference," I said. "We're challenging successfully. Jack's out." She breathed a sigh of relief. "Good. I felt guilty keeping quiet. Glad it's mending." Over the following months, the will contest played out in court, calm and methodical. No big dramatics like in the movies. Laura presented our case flawlessly. The amendment date during Dad's illness. Karen testifying about the pressure. Harold explaining the financial drain. Jack's lawyer tried a weak defense, claiming it was all misunderstandings. But the judge wasn't buying it. Undue influence established. The judge ruled, his gavel coming down. Will amendment invalid. Business reverts to equal shares between siblings, with Emily as executor. Outside the courtroom, Jack approached me hesitantly, looking thinner, his suit ill-fitting now. I'm sorry for everything. The gambling got me, and I panicked. I looked at him, feeling a mix of pity and resolve. Sorry doesn't fix it, Jack. But maybe this is your chance to get help. Therapy, a program, something. He nodded, eyes downcast. Yeah, maybe. Take care of the place, okay? I will, I said, turning away as Tom pulled up in the car. We drove home in comfortable silence, his hand on mine. With the will sorted, I took interim control fully, stabilizing sales and paying off debts within 3 months. We held a staff meeting to announce profit sharing, their cheers filling the room. This is for all of us, I told them. Dad's legacy lives on through you. Aunt Clara hosted a family dinner soon after, the first without tension in ages. To healing, she said, raising her glass. Uncle Mike added, and to Emily, for standing up. Jack didn't come, but he sent a note. Working on myself. Thanks for not pressing criminal charges. I set it aside, focusing on the laughter around the table. Eventually, we sold the business shares fairly, half to a local chain for a good price. The rest split among family and key staff. I retired comfortably at 52, buying a little cottage by the lake with Tom, where we spent days fishing and evenings on the porch. One quiet afternoon, sipping tea as the water lapped the shore, I reflected on it all. Tom, it was hard, but it taught me fairness matters more than blood, I said. He squeezed my hand, and you showed it. Proud of you, always. The family mended somewhat over time. Holidays became less awkward, and Jack slowly rebuilt himself with odd jobs and counseling. His consequences hit home. Debts piling up, no more entitlements, working like the rest of us. For me, freedom meant peace. No more chains of resentment. Looking back, honey, if you're facing something like this, talk it out early. Document everything. And stand your ground. Life's too short for unfairness to win. Have you ever felt that the person who hurt you the most is the one you trusted the most? If you've ever experienced being doubted, blamed, or hurt without being able to speak out, leave a I comment or briefly tell your story. No one is judging you here. We're just reminding each other of one thing. The truth may come late, but it always finds a way to be revealed. And if you want more stories like this about justice turning around, remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. On screen right now, you'll see 2 new stories I think you'll really enjoy. There are many more waiting for you on the channel, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one. See you in the next story. Until then, take care of yourself and the people you love. With all my love and respect.